Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to day 3 of the Immerse Global Summit. My name is John Cunningham and I have the pleasure today of moderating this excellent panel. So those of you out in the Metaverse, this is being live streamed. Thank you for joining at 9 a.m. in the morning, and all of you hundreds of people out here in the audience, thank you for joining us so early. Yes. Okay, so today's panel discussion, the title is Universities in the Age of the Metaverse. And as you know, the Immerse Global Summit, the theme of this is immersive technologies, the Metaverse. And so we thought it would be useful to have a panel discussion and explore what role do universities play. Now, this is a broad topic area, and all the way from curriculum and education all the way through workforce development. But also we have this new phenomenon of digital universities and traditional universities that have gone to producing immersive content. So today we want to explore that. And with me, starting here in the center, I have Dr. Julie Lessiter, who's the Vice Chancellor of Strategic Initiatives at LSU Shreveport. We have Carol Ann Dykes Logue, who is the Director of Programs and Operations at the University of Central Florida Innovation Districts and the Incubation Program. She is a very busy person. And we have Brian Schriner, who is the Dean, College of Communication, Architecture, and the Arts at Floirda International University here in Miami. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to ask each of you to just briefly describe your role at your institution and how it kind of fits into the Metaverse. And why don't we start here with Carol Ann.
Thank you, John, and thank you to all of you. We were joking a little earlier this morning that we've decided most of those of you in our audience are somewhere in the Metaverse, and we just forgot our headset. That's why we're not seeing you, but very appropriate. So I am just delighted to have a chance to tell you a little bit about what the University of Central Florida in Orlando, for those of you that don't know, it's all about. And my role there, as John said, I'm Director of Programs and Operations for our long-standing, very successful business incubation program. It's a multi-site incubator with 4 of our 8 incubators are very tech-centric, and a lot of companies that are doing very digital innovation, much of that immersive technology. And I also direct our innovation districts, which are anchored around our 3 large campuses at UCF. If you don't know, University of Central Florida is, I think, still the 2nd largest university in the country. We do have nearly 72,000 students, and to be a fairly young university. My other role, which is the one I'm actually here at Immerse Global representing more extensively, is that I serve as a founder and director of an entity called the Central Florida Tech Grove. It is a Department of Defense funded innovation hub, a physical place, but a very virtual presence as well. We even have a digital twin of the Tech Grove. And we are funded very uniquely by all 5 DoD services, Navy, Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Space Force, to find innovative solutions in industry and academia, even other government entities, that could help our customers more rapidly innovate solutions for human performance and readiness for our military. And all of that means that I sit in this very interesting spot that intersects academia, industry, and government across a whole lot of great technology sectors and industry sectors between the incubation program and Tech Grove and some other roles that I serve in the community. And a lot of that involves working with our faculty and students, including faculty startups. So I have probably a little bit different insight that I'm hopefully bring to the table here, and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Carol. Okay, Julie.
Thank you. And yes, having talked with Brian and Carol this morning, boy, we've all got a little bit of a different background and perspective. So I am the Vice Chancellor of Strategic Initiatives at LSU in Shreveport. And in that role, I oversee many different areas, particularly enrollment management, online learning, strategy and strategic planning, and then workforce development. And so I use my workforce development division as my sandbox for programs to roll over into the academic side of the university. And part of my role is to look for the white space. So where are we going? What's next? What's the future? So that we can prepare our students upon graduation to be successful both in career and life. And so we talked about a lot, maybe 5 years ago, the word knowledge economy. And I think now we talk about digital economy. And then yesterday I heard the word creator economy. And I really, truly believe that's where we're going. And this is a really interesting, I've learned so much the last couple of days and talking with other folks about how the creative content is incredibly important. And I think that opens a lot of doors to folks in the arts and humanities, where we've been talking a lot about STEM as well in the last couple of years. But I think the arts and humanities are making a comeback. So very excited to be a part of this and to learn. And I think the Metaverse is going to be somewhere where we do have a lot of learning and experiential learning that's very important to preparing students.
Excellent. Thank you, Julie. And Brian.
Good morning, everyone. I am by far the least qualified person to be up here on the stage, so I'll say that from the beginning. I'm at Floirda International University, which is, much like UCF, one of the largest universities in the country. We're about 50 to 60,000 students, depending on how you count them. I'm the dean of a College of Communication, Architecture, and the Arts, which has 4 different schools within that and 3 other departments. This year, we're very proud that we were ranked number 11, the college, as the 11th most innovative college in the country by World Universities with Real Impact. So we have made it a point, a strategic priority in our college to integrate immersive and emerging technologies throughout our curriculum. We're very much an experiential learning-based curriculum and applied research college. We look at, so we've developed initiatives like our Immersive Studio for Altered Reality, which we have 3 of these that has a volumetric capture hub in each of those. We have various degree programs. We've partnered right here in Miami-Dade College, which is here in Miami, to develop with their, it's called Magic, an animation program, which is one of the top programs in the country. We've developed a 2+2 degree program where our students can start 2 years at a community college or local college and then attend the university and get their bachelor's degree and/or master's degree. It's a 2+2 or 2+3. So we've looked at these types of initiatives where we could train the local workforce of Miami. Miami is going through what we call Miami Tech or South Florida Tech. There's a lot of innovation and creativity happening in South Florida, and as the Research University of Miami, we're here to drive that innovative and creative economy. We look at 3 criteria. I've developed 3 criteria by which we assess our immersive and emerging technologies initiatives. And those 3 criteria are access. Are we improving access to our programs? Obviously, virtual reality and other types of immersive emerging technologies enhances access. Then we start looking at engagement. Do these programs actually increase student engagement with one another and with faculty and staff? So is it easier to get there, access, and then what happens when you're in there? And then ultimately, performance. Are the students actually acquiring acquisition of knowledge and applied skills that we're hoping. So those are codependent criteria, but they sort of guide where we go and what we do. I'll stop there because I think that's
That's great. Thanks, Ryan. So what I'm going to do here, we got some questions. There we go. These are kind of 3 broad topics or questions that we want to discuss today to kind of frame the next 30 minutes of this discussion. So the first one is, what is the role universities will play in educating our workforce to enter the workplace in the era of the Metaverse? What is the role that universities are going to play? Who would like to be the first to take a crack at that?
I'll take a crack. Yeah. I'll get started. We'll go backwards this
Yeah,
time.
well, everyone can get a chance, but who's first?
I'm happy to go. I don't think the role of a university playing in the Metaverse would be any different than the role the university plays in any other type of learning environment. I think it's pretty similar. But what I do think, there's much more competition. We're not the sole provider of access to that role or the only one who can credential any longer. There's a lot of real-life examples where employers are not necessarily looking for a degree plus experience. Experience may be enough for certain types of positions any longer. So I think that the pandemic accelerated that, obviously, there were major disruptions in higher education pre-pandemic, but when we went virtual, because we had to if we were going to keep the doors open, what that means in terms of expectations if we're honest with ourselves and we say that the students were successful in a virtual environment, then the question becomes, why don't they remain in the virtual environment? And and as a state university, what would be the contribution of the taxpayers to the physical built environment of a university if you can do this virtually? So I think it's the role of the university. There's more competition for that role.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I agree with what you just said. But I think traditionally higher education has been very slow to innovate, and change takes a long time generally at institutions of higher education. But the pandemic and COVID, when we all went remote and went online, really changed perhaps the future of higher education, in my opinion. Now you have to remember as well, I was telling somebody yesterday, when we all went remote, we discovered that there were some faculty who didn't have a computer at their house and didn't have the internet at their house. I don't know if that was shared at other institutions, but it really highlighted the difference between some of the people we have teaching in the classroom versus the generation that we're teaching who do everything on their phone. Sometimes they can't afford a textbook, but everyone has a phone. And, I think that's very important when you look at how we move forward, particularly the Metaverse is here, the Metaverse is going to grow and expand, immersive learning is going to grow and expand, and I think from a university perspective, we have to make sure that we upskill our faculty, update our pedagogy, and I think that's going to take, you're not going to get everybody there, but when we look at the generation that is coming and sitting in our classrooms, they learn very differently than we did even 5-10 years ago. And to still appeal to them and to make it engaging learning, and to me, engaged learning is impactful learning. We really have to work on upskilling pedagogies in the classroom, making it immersive, and making that experience really valuable to a student.
Okay, Carol?
In addition to all that, I see a huge opportunity for universities like we all represent to continue to play a bigger role in upskilling the general existing workforce too, because it's not just our students that are coming out of the university, but it is those that are already in the workforce that need their skills upgraded. And I know through our continuing education that just continues to grow, our executive education programs, and more I see we have certificate programs and executive education programs that are moving toward helping executives and leaders in business and workforce in business understand this. But I also want to just remind us all maybe that educating our workforce, certainly, universities have 3 roles, right? It's research, it's teaching, and it's public service. And while we're talking a lot about education, the research role that universities play is not going to be done in the metaverse for the most part. And no other institution in the world does the research that academic institutions do. So continuing to drive the development of a lot of the groundbreaking basic technologies that companies then use, governments then agencies then use, that underpins so much of this. I mean, I just think about, at UCF, we were founded 60 years ago, really largely, driven by the need in industry for a lot of these breakthrough technologies that are part of what makes the metaverse possible. So, and our students experiencing the research side of it, that creative thinking process, that problem-solving process, that exploration process that has to happen for us to continue to innovate is really, really critical.
So one of the through lines that I kind of heard here was that it doesn't change the role of the university. The role stays the same. However, the pace at which the technology is changing kind of forces the universities to have to really accelerate adoption of this. Also contribute to the creation of the new technologies. So I'm thinking, in terms of what's changing, I'm starting to see a lot more industry-university collaboration around development of products, right? You're starting to see a lot more of that than you did in the past few years.
And that's an area where I know we're all focusing more and more around partnerships with companies of all sorts, and getting to educating our students. That experiential learning that's already been mentioned is such a huge part of us as academic institutions understanding what's needed out there. What do our students need to walk out the door understanding and having skill sets already in? So those of you that are in industry, if you're not engaged with your local academic institutions, sitting on an advisory board for a department or a college or a degree program, or if you're not bringing students in, speaking in classrooms, whatever it is that you can do to be involved with your local universities, we really need you to help. Now, I'm not an administrator on the academic side, and I'm saying that. Hopefully they agree with me.
I would 100% agree. I think our collaborations with industry have accelerated in the last 3 or 4 years, particularly because technology is changing so quickly that people in industry are, I'm going to say this, don't boo me out of the room, probably more on the cutting edge than some of our faculty are. And so we need them to come into the classroom and help teach and be on advisory boards. And, you know, it's the saying, it takes a village. It definitely takes the village to help educate our students, particularly with this cutting edge technology.
Just briefly, and we can add philanthropy to that as well, because we've had plenty of examples where industry has philanthropically partnered with the university in terms of internships and dual credentialing, certificates, badges, these types of non-degree seeking students who need upskilling, who don't really need another 4 years or 6 years or another 3 letters at the end or 2 letters at the end of their name. They're really just looking for the skill set that they need. I think universities in the history of our country has always played an important role in research and development, and there's been, you know, periods of acceleration. And this is another one of those, I think, that, you know, maybe Einstein, the idea of in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity, here the pandemic, and now we've got an opportunity to rethink some of these things. And how do we partner not just with industry, but with government, local, state, and national? How do we partner with that? As a state institution, one of our primary missions, as I mentioned before, is to contribute to the economy in general of the state of Florida, but here in particular in South Florida. And how does our college do that? We partner with government and we partner with local industry to try to figure out what the skill sets are needed, what degrees are needed, and then making sure our students have a competitive advantage upon graduation, that we don't just flood the market with credentialed, quote unquote, credentialed individuals who are not employable, which is a disservice, obviously, to the state of Florida and the taxpayers who are paying largely to supporting those students.
Okay, great. All right, let's move on to the second topic question. What are the challenges of using traditional pedagogy and curriculum? What are some of the challenges that you're facing as a university using traditional means of education? Who wants to take that?
I'll start and I'll let my esteemed colleagues add in. So if you look at traditional higher education, we run semester-based 16-week classes. A lot of the traditional pedagogy is stand and deliver. My institution has been very successful in the online market, and we've done a lot of accelerated classes in a 8-week format. So there's a lot of opportunities for students to step in and step out and accelerate their degree time frame. One of the biggest challenges, I think, and higher education is actually adapting right now, where we are doing a lot more stackable credentials and badges, which you've mentioned, which we call that new and innovative. I'm not sure it's 100% new and innovative, but that's where we are. We like to think that it's innovative, but you know, you still have this 4-year degree. A lot of the challenges, again, like Brian mentioned, are with the credentials which industry is looking for, and how do you match that up or mirror that or partner that with a very broad set of coursework to be able to show that a student has a well-rounded education, but also the skill set needed to be successful in the workplace.
It is a challenge in academia, and I'm going to say this, not being in the classroom anymore, but it just to teach those fundamentals that students need, and yet give them the skill set. And I often see that this semester basis learning schedule that we have, one, it doesn't align with industry partnerships that would help students have the opportunity to really engage in a more meaningful way and have that credited toward their learning and their credentialing in a lot of ways. But I see, while there are challenges, I see opportunities to take the traditional curricula and pedagogy and adapt it in this new immersive world to make it more engaging, but also to convey a lot of those fundamental theories. And, physics is physics. It's not going to change, right? But how do you teach that in a way that students can learn at their own pace more readily, understand it more quickly, perhaps, in terms of not just the theory, but the application simultaneously. So that's where I see a lot of opportunities to blend what we have today with the immersive technologies and the traditional pedagogy.
I think I would agree with what both of you have said. I think there's two things that I would encourage us to look at. One would be what I mentioned earlier, which is with any curriculum, is access, engagement, and performance. It wouldn't matter what the environment was that you were producing that curriculum in. I think those are the three criteria that we would look at. But perhaps a larger question that I would encourage us to think about is, why does it take 120 credits to get a bachelor's degree for every major? Why is that? Why are we still using an antiquated educational system that's standardized? Why is every degree the same amount of credits? Does that still make sense in the 21st century? And I think that could be part of the larger disruption conversation, is, are we still trying to cram square pegs in round holes? Do we have a pedagogical model, or do we have a financial model rather than a pedagogical model that we're hiding behind the financial model? So I would encourage more discussion around those types of questions at universities, around, are we really meeting the needs of our citizenry on the structure that we're using to credential individuals? I know that's very controversial, but it's certainly something that we should look at, because it's standardized across every university, every college, the same number of credits no matter where you go, and I understand why, but perhaps in today's day and age it's not the same need.
So do you see, we're seeing a lot more of these non-traditional universities or colleges coming up with these, let's call them stacked skills programs that are getting people to certifications quicker. Now, if we go back 50, 70 years, and we go back to when they had home economics? Home economics and mechanics in schools. Students would explore that, they'd decide that's what they want to do for their career, and they'd go out and get skills. They didn't need a degree. But for some reason, it seemed that in technology, you have to have a degree. It's just sort of like a given. Now, we're starting to see that change, right? So if you look at a coder doesn't necessarily have to have a degree. They can have a passion and a love for coding and go learn those skills. Now, however, there's a role that a foundational university education plays in a broader education space. So I guess the question I want to ask here is, do you see that these new emerging learning platforms kind of forcing universities to relook at how they deliver education? Is it forcing a discussion?
I would love to jump in on the second part of that, because I talk to industry a lot who tell me, I just need a student with this certification. And I tell them, well, hold on a second, because what you really want is someone that can do more than just that. So I think students of today learn a lot. The number one tool that they use to look up information is YouTube. So they could teach themselves a lot of things on YouTube. But what coming together, even in a synchronous online or in-person class teaches them is all the skills that you want them to have as well. Maybe not skills, we'll call them competencies, which are the how to work on a team, how to think critically, how to do time management, which we all know is very important to have people be able to put their projects together and get them turned in on time, particularly in a business setting. The communication skills, all of the things that a university, we call them soft skills, use whatever term you want for them, but that is the value that I think is never going to go away from higher education. It's the skills plus. It's, okay, they have these skills, but then they can also do all these other things. And we are actually looking at a way to try to badge those skills in courses to be able to show employers that our students don't just have this particular skill set, but the technical skill set, but have mastered competencies in all these different areas. So just to...
Yep. Brian, Caroline, you want to add to that? Or?
Sure, I think that's very well said. I think that is one of the many value adds of a university education. One thing that we're doing in our college, a colleague of mine, John Stewart, just co-hosted a conference that ended yesterday, was around inclusivity in the metaverse and what that means. So another role the universities can play in the research end is not just the technical skills, but also looking at the theoretical, the legal, the moral, the social implications of this new environment and what does it mean in terms of identity and access and engagement and things of that nature. So to that last question about the role the universities are playing and our value added, that's another value add I think universities can contribute to the overall conversation. And then third, obviously, is just a more general understanding about what the metaverse is or isn't. And universities have historically served as convening spaces for those types of conversation. And that is another role that the university can a value add the university can provide.
I think I certainly agree with that, because I see at UCF one of the roles that we often play in the university is being able to convene the community in a way that other organizations perhaps can't, because we are so integrated into the community too. But there's a couple other points that came to mind as the two of you were talking, and one is the push that I've seen grow across a lot of universities and certainly UCF, and that is to make available to students in any field, any degree field, the opportunity to learn entrepreneurial skills. As I tell any classroom or group of students I talk to, heaven help us if all of you want to be CEOs of a company. We don't need that. But we need every one of you, no matter where you're working, no matter what you're doing, to have the ability to think like an entrepreneur thinks, and think ROI, and think value proposition, and think what customer would really care, because that's part of what makes you a really valuable employee. I'm seeing more of that being infiltrating almost every department in the university. The other thing that has traditionally been a challenge, I think, in universities, and that we're making a big push for, as I'm sure FIU and LSU Shreveport are, is cross-college, cross-department, interdisciplinary faculty and student efforts. We have faculty clusters, for example, that those clusters are focused on key strategic areas of research and academic and industry engagement for us at UCF, and it brings together faculty from across a multitude of departments and colleges and disciplines, which, guess what, is how the world works, right, once you get into industry. So really trying to break through these silos that often exist in academia so that our students have the chance to experience that and our faculty have the chance to experience that. And you know what? That attracts some really great young faculty as well, who are the ones that are bringing in the openness to the new innovative ways of teaching and doing.
Just to add to that too, because we traditionally operate in our silos, sciences, humanities, arts, business, and within those curricula, the students are generally doing a capstone project in their major. And I think if higher education could do one thing that would be impactful for these students is to have a university-wide capstone class where you take students from business, arts, science, and put them together to solve a real-world problem. Because you're absolutely right. Now, in the world today, you can't just have one experience of, I'm very skilled in business. Okay, well, you're going to be entrepreneurial, which is, if we move to as we are moving to the creator economy, you're going to have the skill sets of all of those people to make a very effective team. So if I could ever get that done, I may retire at that point.
Those are excellent points. How many of you ever heard of a College of Communication, Architecture, and the Arts? It's a mouthful to say. Well, there's only 2 other colleges in the entire country that have that unique group of disciplines under one dean, University of Memphis, FIU, and Northeastern. And our sort of moniker or slogan is Creative Forces at Work. But essentially, we were created by our former president and provost for exactly those reasons, to intentionally put creative disciplines together under one unit to share resources, share faculty, share curriculum, and look for innovative ways to educate students, apply research, and better serve the community. And as I mentioned before, it's paid off some dividends with that recent ranking of 11th most innovative college in the country. I think it's largely based on the mouthful of the name of the college. But I would agree, if we can expand that. The problem with this is that, what I mentioned before, is that 120 credits, and how do you meet the accreditation standards of each discipline, and what does that mean in terms of how many electives the students can take, and how does that fit into their schedule? It's an administrative problem that needs to be solved if we're going to better serve who we're supposed to be serving.
Okay, here's an interesting question. So a lot of companies have created this role called the Chief Metaverse Officer. And Kathy Hackle, who's one of our VRARA Association longtime members, was really kind of the first person to take that title, Chief Metaverse Officer. Do you see the need at a university for a similar type of role?
I know Kathy, but I'm not exactly sure what the Chief Metaverse Officer would do. But in our particular college,
well, you know what I can do. Let me help frame. So the Chief Metaverse Officer in an organization is really a strategist. The role is to look at how do these new immersive technologies, Web3, Metaverse, all of this, how can that organization better engage? Because this is the next economy, right? The Web3 economy is the next evolution of the internet, and everyone needs to be involved. So it's really a strategy role.
I would agree, yes. It's necessary. In our college, we partnered with Knight Foundation, which is based locally here in Miami, but it's a national foundation. And they funded what we call an innovator in residence, who looks at those questions. Carlos Fueo is our innovator in residence, and he reports to the dean's office, and he helps me think through some of those things I talked about before, and he's actually very much engaged in industry. So yes, we have not a Chief Metaverse, but a Chief Innovation Officer in the college, which is externally funded. And then there's a local organization here, which is Lab 22, I believe is the name, by Saif Ishouf. He founded this lab. And he's put together a Web3 consortium of universities. So local universities here in South Florida have joined together to begin looking at ways that we can collaborate around Web3, share ideas, share resources, develop degree programs. So we're not doing everything, on our own, so to speak. We still have the ability to do it on our own, but it makes more sense to at least be having conversations of where do we share resources. Those are the types of conversations that have led to the partnerships I mentioned before.
I just had a moment where I thought about students paying for college with crypto, and how the federal government would award financial aid in crypto. And if you've ever filled out a FAFSA form and know how difficult that is, just curious how that would work. But no, I think that's incredibly important. Again, when our role as higher education, like we've said, is to push research and innovation, and so a chief strategist is an incredibly important role. And as we move to the metaverse, we'd better have our finger on the button of what's happening and what it means, so that the first student that does ask to pay in crypto, we have a good answer for them.
I was just thinking about our current leadership at UCF, and we have a couple of individuals in chief whatever, roles that I think together kind of make up that role now. It's just not called that, but they look strategically and as well as tactically at our existing extensive online learning and some of our current immersive learning and how that's rolled out not only with our enrolled students, but for faculty education and for continuing education. So, but I don't know whether they'd be chief metaverse officer or not, but something similar perhaps to drive that strategy across the institution and better engage industry in some of that as well.
Well, I mean, I'm a person that lives, eats, and breathes this industry, and I can't keep up. I can't imagine how a traditional institution has any hope of keeping up if they don't have someone whose day job is to just understand what's happening and try to translate it, back to the institution.
Well, I'm going to kind of go back to some fundamentals here, because we talk a lot in Orlando, as you know, John, about, we almost chuckle a little bit because this word, the metaverse, is just kind of encapsulate a lot of what we've been doing in Orlando for decades, and that is developing and applying the underlying technologies and tools and capabilities that, if you look at the emerging list of what makes up the metaverse, all those innovation areas, we've had it in Orlando for a long time with our extensive decades-long cluster of simulation and training in the military, our world-class theme park companies that have long been driving innovation in immersive technologies, the home of Electronic Arts Tiburon Studios and their extraordinary collaboration with UCF to help us develop our Master's Academy in Gaming Development, a Full Sail University, and the AI, the photonics and optics and the sensor technologies and all those things, the AI that are part of all this. I would just caution that we don't lose sight of what has to exist to continue to innovate, to make the metaverse happen, and don't let that get lost in the glitz of the uses of what we perceive the metaverse to be. And if we're going to talk about the role of universities changing and evolving, that is where universities have to continue and will continue to play an absolutely fundamental role, along with industry, in driving the innovation of what makes the metaverse possible. So that's a deviation from your question about a chief metaverse officer. But.
Well said, Caroline. Okay, so we got a couple minutes here. I'm going to do something different here. I'm going to ask a question, and I want you to respond with the first number that comes to your mind. Okay, you ready? Because this will help put some things in perspective. Okay. Looking at immersive technologies, VRAR, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest, how important do you think those technologies are in the future of education? Carol Ann, 1 to 5, 5 being the most important. 4. Julie?
5.
5. Brian?
4.5.
That's how he became a dean. He's good at negotiating. Okay, so we all then agree that this technology is transformational. It opens up possibilities that many of us have dreamed about. It's just the challenge is in interjecting that technology into traditional processes, into education, right?
You said education, not training.
Not training, right?
If you said training, I'd said a 5.
Yeah, no, education.
I think it's really important too. We run a lot of K-12 summer camp, essentially to build the pipeline. And I live in a majority minority city. And so being able, to Brian's point about access, a lot of people who live in the area I live perhaps haven't ever left the state. And so these young children have no idea what exists beyond the world that they live in. And you can show them a 2D picture in a book, but we have this hologram wall that we bring kids in, and it's the most fun summer camp I ever have put on. And to get them to see the pyramids of Egypt, or to get them even to go, we have zoo characters that they can see in holograms. And it broadens their horizons, it broadens their education, and it gives them the ability to know that there's something beyond the life that they have, perhaps to inspire them to do something bigger and better with their life. And I think that's what's important.
Excellent. Well, the theme of this conference has been Inspiration Delivered, and I thank you all so much for joining us on this panel. And we have another university panel at 10:40, so we have an hour break before the next university panel. Kind of the same topic, same theme, but we're going to dive into some different topic areas, so please join us then. Yeah, and thank you all for being here. Thank you very much.